You all for joining tonight's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Good to see everybody. I hope everyone is happy and healthy, starting to get out in their front yards a little bit. So first item on the agenda for tonight is the approval of the December 17th meeting minutes. Michelle had distributed those electronically. I hope you've had a chance to review them.
Robert Graham, for the record, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Okay, motion on the floor to approve the minutes as written.
Henry Leskinen, second that motion.
Okay, motion has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion carried. They are approved. We'll start off with some reports. Michelle, would you start off for the staff?
Yeah, since it's been so long since we've met, I've got a little bit for you. We did have a BZA case over on Brightside Drive for a variance of a height and no, it was just the height. And it was denied because it was way above our, you know, we had set the accessory ordinance at 15 feet for a detached garage. This was much higher. So since then, they have modified what they were going to do and gotten their permit for the garage. Number One North, of course, has moved. Bijou, the new salon, was supposed to open in April. I imagine they're ready to go as soon as retail is allowed to open back up. We've had a couple annexation besides the Lippy annexation and the Patriots. We have had questions asked about the Schaefer property, which is out of town on the corner of Farrier Road. Is it Farrier? No. What road is that? I can't even think. What is that parcel? There by Thomas Tree Farm. You know which one I mean, the old Schaefer property. We also had Roger Forbes come in and ask about a parcel he has that is behind the water tank that actually owns a strip out to York Street. These two last ones did not pick up a packet, so they just asked about it. The stormwater management project on Route 30 at Whispering Valley is about 40% complete. The town has received our Sustainable Communities renewal, so we're good for that kind of grants. And the town hall is still closed to the public. All the employees are back and working, but as far as right now, we're still closed to the public. So that's about all I have to tell you.
Okay. Anything else you want to add for the town?
No, I don't have a town report. I kind of put it all together.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Dale, do you have anything from the council?
Yeah, just a couple highlights. A public meeting was held on the FY21 budget. What's important to note is that we maintain the current tax rate of 21.6 cents per $100 of assessed value of real property. And there was also no increase in water or sewer rates. And then we also introduced the Patriots Overlook annexation. Other than that, it was just regular business.
Very good. Thank you. Price, what do you have for us from the county?
Got quite a bit. We actually held our first virtual planning commission meeting today. Everything seemed to go pretty well. We had 2 cases that went ahead in front of the planning commission. Also, the other big things are, even though the county office building is closed to the public, people are starting to slowly go back in, and planning is going to have somebody in office, at least one person, if not 2 people a day, 5 days a week, for phone calls, that kind of thing. So we actually have somebody in the office itself. But in the meantime, we've restarted our annual reports. We've restarted the transportation plan, and we actually have multiple map amendments coming up for water and sewer. And we actually have an amendment coming up. It's going to probably be considered a summer amendment. That's going to have a decent amount of map amendments, as well as a large portion of Westminster redid their chapter aspect. So we're working on that right now. And again, in essence, all planners in the office, whether it's physical 1 day a week or going to be virtual via computer, phone, email, that kind of thing. So we're hoping, moving forward, and we'll get done as soon as we can. Also, we've hired a new planner. He started about 2 weeks ago, and he took the position, Bobby's position, when she retired. So she sort of had a farewell that never came because we had to leave office before she actually retired on April 1st. So I'm sure once everything is back up and going, we'll get together with her and throw a correct retirement party. But right now we've got, we're pretty much full staff now and just waiting to get back to the office to really move forward. But all the projects we've had sort of on hold in the holding pattern now on go, and everybody's working on those so we can keep on moving forward. And I'm going in as needed to review site plans, development review plans, whatever it may be. I'm the sole one doing that. So as they come in, I'll review them and send comments back out to towns if need be, if they're within the 1 mile radius or within the city limits. And then, of course, to all the other parties at B. That's about it.
Bryce, who is the new planner and what areas does he have?
His name is Matt. We have not assigned any areas yet. He's going to probably shadow each planner for a while, but I'm sure once we get back in the office and getting back in more of the swing of things, he will probably be assigned probably one area, maybe smaller, one of the smaller areas. But I think each planner has at least 3 or 4 different areas they're looking at right now. So he probably, at least help divide that up and take at least 1 away or 2 away. And then so he has about two areas to help out with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Bryce. Is there any, or if you can comment, is there any large development review going on in and about the Manchester area, not in, of course, within the town proper, but out in the surrounding areas those communities would probably be part of the Manchester fabric in some sort?
No big projects. We've had one in not at large, but our by request rezonings that we're going through right now that came with the comprehensive rezonings. There's one property that at one point in time was in the Manchester growth area, but it was also at one point in time was in the Hampstead growth area. Now it's in, since both towns shrank their growth area, it's in the county. It's actually in the Manchester Fire District, Fire and EMS District, but they're looking to potentially, they asked for rezoning for making the property a little more commercial in the front half and residential in the rear half. But at this point in time, that's it. I'm not sure what's going on the property. They just asked for the rezoning aspect of things, and it's half, depending on the way you look at it, it's almost smack dab in the middle between Hampstead and Manchester.
It wouldn't happen to be the property just south of Cape Horn Road, would it?
That's the property, correct.
Okay. And can you tell me how many acres that is total, if you know?
The total property itself is roughly 67, 68, but I believe they're only asking for roughly 27 acres total.
To rezone for business?
Correct.
Okay.
So there's already a portion that's considered business, but they're looking to potentially do another 27 is what they're asking for.
Okay, thank you. That's important for our deliberations. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add?
I have nothing else.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in.
You're welcome.
Okay, next item, now that that's taken care of, next item on the agenda is discussion of the solar ordinance that came back from council. Michelle, you want to lead us? You said in one of our emails that there were some questions that came back from the council on that.
Yes.
Or did I misread that?
No, when the ordinance went back from us to the mayor and council, there was a public comment there from a gentleman with a solar company who had sent some comments in, and I think I sent them to you, outlined for each of our items and what he agreed upon and what he felt he wanted edited. And Bob, I think you responded to almost all of them, right?
Michelle, is that the one you sent
Sorry.
us with? I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, the one that Michelle sent us was in letter form, and she followed up with the actual ordinance as was presented to the council. I did provide a series of responses to each one of those, and I'm pulling my responses up to those that some of them I felt were in need of some additional consideration, and some of them I respectfully disagree with their request to have them changed. Let's see, where did it go? Document. Okay.
The first one was on item A. If any of you have your the real solar ordinance in front of you, it was item A as kind of questioning on what we actually meant by density equal to or less greater than R10. Right. Did you find your comments, Bob?
I have not found them yet because I know I had filed them for this meeting.
Is that the one where, Bob, your responses are in red?
No, that was the council draft. Item A, yes, I indicated that yes, we should be clarifying that the intent there was that they are not appropriate on any lot that allows a lot of a size equal to or less than the R10,000. So R10,000 or 7,500 are not eligible for large community solar arrays. So my suggested language was for that is shall not be permitted on lots in zones that allow for lot sizes equal to or less than the minimum for that of the R10,000 zoning. So anything that would permit a lot smaller than that is ineligible.
You're saying anything 10,000 or less?
Anything in a zone that's 10,000 or less. So if you've got a lot that's zoned R10,000, however, it just happens to be a 30,000 square foot lot, that's still not an appropriate use in my opinion.
I agree. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
The next item that was questioned was related to setbacks. It was item E of the ordinance. And his concern was whether we were double setbacking the facility because there's an internal setback from their security fence and a safety buffer for fire. My suggestion for that clarification is setbacks to structures and all associated equipment shall be a minimum of twice the normal setback from the boundaries of all adjoining properties as that of the underlying zone, which is the current way it reads, adding that fence and site access shall be determined by the Planning Commission. So in other words, the fencing could be within that buffer or that building setback. It's just a setback to an actual structure, which is the way I believe it was originally intended.
Yeah, that was the intent of our original discussion on that. We wanted to make sure that we maintained additional setback from property line to the actual solar structure itself.
They were questioning item F, which relates to the environmental items, indicating that that was basically a redundant condition. In my opinion, item F can stand. It doesn't hurt to be redundant.
I agree with that.
Item I as an indigo, they had requested a modification to it, which relates to the trigger for being able to use it. I've suggested changing the language to a copy of the signed certificate of completion from the utility company shall be provided within 6 months of the building permit sign off and prior to commercial operation of the facility. Upon written request by the applicant, the zoning administrator may approve up to 2 6-month extensions. Approval for any time to comply any additional time shall be required by the Planning Commission. So in other words, after building permit is issued and signed off on, they have, they're 6 months to get their utility company to agree that it's online, ready to go. If for some reason they can't comply with that, either the utility company is not allowing it to go on the grid at that point in time, pandemic, etc., the zoning administrator can issue 2 6-month extensions. If it needs to go beyond that, I feel it needs to come back to us. It was premature. Something is just not right.
I agree.
Item J, they had requested a change, and I didn't have any problem with the change they were requesting there. It was such a mundane one that I didn't even.
Yeah, all they were
Right.
discussing there was that over time, whatever color they originally, the structure was originally made in might fade a little bit over the life of the facility. So
Right. Yep.
I didn't see that as being a major issue either.
Right. I think our main issue was, you can't paint it, some wild colors just because you want to paint it some wild colors. Item L, which was related to the landscaping, I cannot agree to their requested change. The intent for doubling the landscaping was to ensure adequate screening. It was twice the planning, not twice the distance. So that was my opinion there. And
They seem to be indicating on that comment that they don't want a double row of planting. I think that's what they're talking about there with the depth of planting. So what they're saying is they want to just stuff things in closer to each other. I'm not in concurrence with their recommendation because ultimately what you're going to end up with are plants that are going to start dying on the sides if they're planted too close to each other. They're saying they're willing to put twice the amount of plant material in, but they want it in a single row across the perimeter of the property. Whereas I'd rather see a staggered 2-row array of planting as a typical landscape screen is designed to do.
I concur. And the last item they had requested a change was to item O, and they were requesting to change virtual to remote. I don't see any problem with making that change.
Bob, I have one other question. On their request for changes that they sent in that did have the red writing on it, they had questioned N, which says within 1 year, 18 months, the date of site plan approval, the applicant must have put proof of acceptance of the proposed facility by the Public Service Commission. And they said project reviews can be held up beyond developer's control. which is why we prefer to see a building permit issuance at the gate. A utilities yearly program capacity could be full, causing a project to have to wait for the additional capacity the following year, making 18 months a minimum time frame. So, do you,
Okay, I apologize for missing that one in my previous response.
that's okay, because I assumed that it would kind of fall into some of the other plans that we do, that if you, the zoning administrator can always grant a 6 month is what we have in our code.
Right.
So you can still get 6 months. And if it, like you said, if it's longer than that, they might have a problem.
You know, because of the unique nature of this, I would be comfortable with having 2 6-month extensions as an option.
Okay.
Just knowing that these are unique features and you're having to deal with the utility company as well as the PSC, and it just, things take a while sometimes. So I'm okay with 2 6-month extensions.
Same wording as you did on the other one.
That would be my preference.
Okay. So if everyone is okay, if everyone is okay with that, then I will edit it up, send it back out, and then we'll ship it off back to the,
I think I need to make a motion, or someone needs to make a motion to that. So for the record, Commissioner Graham, I make a motion to make edits to the solar ordinance as discussed here tonight and retransmit those to the council.
Okay. Motion, first of all, Bob, excellent job done on those responses. I think they're all reasonable. There is a motion on the floor to accept Bob's recommendations and have Michelle make the edits and send them forward to the council. Is there a second?
Commissioner Leskinen will second the motion.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Dale, is that an aye or a nay?
That was an aye.
Okay, aye also. Okay, so the motion's carried. Bob, again, great job. Good work on that. That's a tough one. So with that completed, let's, we have the Lippy annexation. We had sent our letter to the council with our concerns with the annexation of the Lippy property. That was, I did attend the council meeting. I believe that was a December council meeting. Went over it briefly. Dale, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the commission's feelings, and it was turned over. So now that it has been accepted, I think we need to have some formal discussion on what we believe is in the town's best interest from our perspective for them to make a final decision. So I'll open the floor for comments. Anybody have any concerns, questions? We're going to stick with the letter. I think we just want to open it up for discussion. We did receive, I believe, Michelle, 2 letters of from citizens saying that they do not believe the annexation is in the town's, in their opinion, in the town's best interest. I can't remember the second one. I believe the first one was from a Mr. Dice Road. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct on the first one. He was the 90-year-old gentleman who lived on Charmel.
That's okay.
And he said he didn't support the annexation, and he also indicated if we were going to bring the property into town, that they'd have to have a single in, single out road was his request. But he was against the annexation and said his surrounding neighbors supported his position.
I kind of was wishing that he would give us kind of some addresses so we could get what the supporting neighbors, a number, if it's 10, 5, 2, whatever that is. But anyway, the letter's greatly appreciated. And then, Michelle, I think there was another one that you just sent to us that did not support the annexation, and I don't know who it is from.
The second one was for the Lippy. That was to the Lippy, I mean, sorry, Patriots.
Patriot. Okay, sorry about that. Got them mixed up. Okay. So again, folks, I think we need to, in the way I understand, we need to make a decision, or we need to come up with some verbiage on what we want to send back to the town that we think is in the best interest of the town based on our position with this with the possibility of this annexation. Tom, do you have anything you want to, any kind of advice, suggestion, information you want to provide to the commission before we discuss?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The purpose at this point for this coming back to the Planning Commission, and what the Planning Commission is called upon to do, is to, first of all, provide an overall recommendation to the town council as to whether they should or should not approve the annexation. And even if you vote to approve it, you can say yes, but with the following recommendations or conditions, if you will, probably along the lines of your prior letter. The other, it's not really, part and parcel of that is the zoning that is proposed in the application for annexation. I think that the Planning Commission's role particularly is to comment upon, again, as part of your overall recommendation about what the Planning Commission believes, whether or not the proposed zoning is an appropriate zone if the property were annexed. In addition, again, along the lines of, you all have done much of this already. Typically, in my experience, this moment is the first moment the Planning Commission weighs in on one of these. So you all have done a lot of the groundwork, fortunately. So a lot of what I'm saying here, I realize is, already in your letter. But one of the things that the town staff will have to do is put together what's called an annexation plan, which the purpose of that will be, A, has to be approved by the town council. B, will go to the county planning department as well as the state planning department, along with the rest of the annexation materials for comment, which will be due by the time the public hearing that the town council will have to have is ready, is scheduled and is ready to occur. So those are kind of the reasons this is back to you. In essence, it's back to you to A, provide a formal recommendation, whether to annex or not, and if so, under what conditions, to the town council. B, as part of that, to comment on the appropriateness of the proposed zoning. And finally, to assist town staff in putting together a draft annexation plan that goes to the town council for review and approval, and ultimately for comment by county and state departments of planning.
Okay, I do have a quick question. So in the instance, the commission decides to go with a, yes, we think that this should be annexed, we would then go to the step of providing all the pieces of information that you noted, correct?
Yes, right. And again, you all have done a lot of that work already because of the letter.
Okay. If the commission were to decide that they give a negative overall recommendation, it would be in our best interest to provide multiple or appropriate reasons why we believe the annexation will not benefit the town. Am I saying that correctly?
Agreed, which would be conveyed to the town council in the form of a staff report and or your minutes.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
I have a question. If we convey a negative on the annexation, that we as a commission do not support the annexation, that is still just a recommendation to the council. They still have the right, if they, in their desire, want to annex the property, they could still support the annexation even if we provided a negative recommendation. Is
That's
that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I have a question. If they have a negative recommendation, we still have to create the annexation plan as if it goes through, this is what we would like to see happen.
That's correct. That's what the statute, the state statute requires on annexations. And the main purpose of the plan, basically it follows your municipal growth element in your master plan and contains a number of those elements. The major purpose of it, although it hasn't always been called an annexation plan, it used to be called an annexation outline and things like that. The main purpose of it, as I read it, is to identify what infrastructure may need to be created in order to accommodate the new growth, and who's to pay for it. And if it's the municipality, what's the plan for paying for it? And when are you planning to bring it online versus when you're planning to, or when it's likely that the development would occur. So that's, I think, the main purpose of an annexation plan.
Are you ready for questions or comments from us yet, Alex?
Yeah, sure. I mean, hold on a minute, Scott, please.
Okay.
Tom, is there anything else you would like to add, or is there any other, first of all, Scott, do you want to talk about, or do you have a question?
I have a question, and one of them relates kind of to Tom. That's more of a legal question.
Please go ahead and with your questions. Let's get Tom's business, so maybe that gives everybody some more information to start a discussion. So please go ahead with your question.
One of the questions I have is a lot of past discussion has been over the traffic issues and the intersection and the stoplight and that type of thing. Let's say one of the main hitches, or we've actually put it in writing in the first one that we want to require the developer to have to pay for a traffic signal and a four-way stop there and create a new road and that type of thing. What if it moves forward and the council approves it and there's an annexation plan, and they've met every stipulation that's put in except for this traffic thing, and the state comes back and says it's an absolute impossibility because of there's a small concern of wetland issues right there at that intersection. There's actually cattails that grow there. You'd actually have to move our water pump, our water building, and that type of thing to create an intersection there. But what if they come back and say it's a legal impossibility? Would that be a kick out of our requirement because it's an absolute impossibility, and then they can move forward without putting an intersection there?
Well, a couple things on that. First of all, the annexation agreement that would be part and parcel of an annexation resolution that gets passed, hypothetically, of course, would contain a number of provisions about the road improvements that the developer would be responsible for putting in. It may well be the case that language is generic enough to require a result more than necessarily approving a specific road improvement plan, which might, for instance, come later at the site plan or subdivision plan review. So in other words, the language in the annexation agreement may be more generic than put a four-way stop here and, and all of that. It may, in other words, be, I guess what they call in some industries as a result specification. This is the result we want, and it's going to be up to the developer to undertake that. And at the end of the day, it's really at site plan or subdivision plan that all of the details of that get ironed out. So perhaps one thing may be impossible, as you say, due to wetlands or the like, but it might well be on the developer to then fashion a design around that to achieve a result, if that makes sense. It's also at least theoretically possible to condition an annexation on certain things occurring in the future where the annexation does not go through. To be honest, I find that more theoretical and on paper. Once you're down the road and you're beyond an annexation and it's occurred, and they're now down to submitting subdivision or site plan. But I would say in theory, I guess you could condition an annexation on a particular remedy, a particular design being approved at the end of the day by the SHA or the state or whatever governing authority you need approval from. Again, you know, once you're beyond, you know, once the annexation's approved and you're down the road, I find that a little, that's a tougher thing to undo once you're down that far.
Yeah, my
So
concern
hopefully that
there.
answers the question.
Yeah, my concern there is if we do something like that, does that give a developer recourse to go sue us if we're
right.
playing, letting them spend all this money up to point Y and they can't get to Z because of some improbability, then they come back and say, well, you shouldn't have let us down the road.
Right.
We want our money.
Right, and without commenting on whether they'd be successful in that in that kind of suit, they may well not be successful. But where's the town then after a year of litigating that, still having spent a lot of money on people of man? So you're going to want to avoid that. So that's why I find that kind of an inadequate. Inadequate solace, so to speak, to think that you can condition it, and let's say a year later, if a state, SHA, whomever says, it's impossible, it can't be done. That's why I'd prefer something in the annexation agreement probably to be a little more generic, result oriented.
So here's another concern I have, and this might be addressed to you and Price, and maybe Bob and Henry can help me with it. But the way I understand it is that the Lippy property is a county, currently it's a county issue. The Old Town is Manchester's issue. If we don't annex, is that right, Michelle?
What you say?
Oh, we got Larry coming in.
Well, my Zoom disappeared on me but I'm up now.
Welcome in, Larry.
Thank you.
So if it doesn't annex, here's what I see potentially happen. He could put the entrance, on the county, on the county property, on the Lippy property, and divert around us where we're so worried about traffic at that intersection, and come into our development or to the development part of Manchester, and circumvent it as a back around, because we spent a lot of hours discussing how to get in and out of that property at that intersection, and that to me that's the largest concern that I have on the entire project is the movement of cars and the destruction of traffic, right there at the high school and right before you get in and out of town, with one of the larger developments that's going to be, around the area. And then, so it's a very awkward situation, and, I don't know if Price, if you've run into that situation in other parts of the county or any other developments that you might be able to give us some ideas or input on that. It seems to be a really unique situation to me because we studied the intersection going in on the county property, and how we feel that traffic would back up into town and cause more disruption, and actually turning in at where the county entrance is. He already got approval of a bridge. If I remember a couple years ago, he got an approval for a bridge to go across that wetlands by MDE, if I'm not mistaken. And it was slid in like a 30-second comment one night, if I recall it right. So he does already have egress. He's got some approval working to get into that property on the county. So to me, it's a situation if we don't annex, we lose control of that intersection. I mean, if we do annex, we gain control of the intersection, but if we lose the battle over a four-way, it's like we accomplished nothing. So
Scott, that's assuming that when we review the revised plans for Old Town, that we're going to grant him access from Old Town into the portion of the property into the county. There's nothing to say.
Okay, that's a
We don't have to grant that approval. We can say that that intersection for the, whatever he's allowed 6 lots on the Lippy property, if he wants to come out on 30 and allow 6 cars to come, 6 households to access 30
Okay.
there, maybe state highway lets them in, maybe they don't. I guess they might grant them access there, but it doesn't mean that as a town that we have to tie that road network into Old Town. We can say that intersection coming out of the Lippy property is inadequate to handle the additional houses at Old Town.
And you're going into where I think we should expound on that. That was my second part of what I was going to talk about is I don't know that we expounded enough on the traffic's only one paragraph, and we've probably got 10 hours spent on traffic. And the school comment, Alex was heading in that direction earlier. So if we got this property, we've got the equine coming in, you've got this potential thing in between Hampstead and Manchester working. And so there's more of a school issue than a sentence. But this 7 versus 40, I don't know that the commission understands as much depth of discussion as we've had internally over if it's a county property, it's 6 or 7 houses. If we annex and go with the new zoning, he's got like 20 potential in there. And Old Town was only approved at like, what's Old Town now, Michelle? 6, 17 or 18?
Old Town was recorded prior to us even having zoning regulations. So at that time, it was approved as 40 lots. It is 40 recorded lots. However, today, he couldn't build on a lot because he couldn't get a grading permit due to the wetland issues and all the environmental issues. So he'd have to redo that entire parcel. And that's where we came up with he probably wouldn't get 10, because of environmental issues with it. But there's also, which I have to take into account, is it's not just the Old Town, it's connecting to his out of town, and then it connects to his partial, the entire partial. Some of it's out of town, some's in town. And then you have it connecting to what we had approved as the Carroll property. And that'll all.
That's where Southwest comes in.
Yes, and I was going to try to share that screen, but I don't know how good I am with that.
So just for general comment to the commission, looking at what the two processes, okay, so without the, go ahead,
job,
you got it, Michelle, yep, nice job. So I just want to let everybody know that just think about this as we're discussing. I know we're looking at one piece of property, but I think we can all agree theoretically that the annexation of the Lippy property and the development of that area leads to the Carroll property that we did approve as being part of that. It just makes life much more easier for that property to gain water and sewer. On top of that, 40, and I believe Carroll is what, Michelle, 15 or 10?
18.
Okay, so there's 58. We also have in front of us another 30 to 33 lots at Burwager's property. And then the other item on our agenda tonight, which was introduced Tuesday to the town council based on the preliminary site plans.
I lost
Is
it.
there
Alex, you
a
froze.
couple of years. Oh, am I there?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Dang. You
yeah.
were based on the preliminary plan that they just showed to the town council. I think there was 36 at page.
Something like that. So where are we? Like 120, somewhere between 120 and 125 homes, give or take one or two, that we plan to bring into the town's school district, sewer system, and water system, as well as traffic. So, and I didn't even count what the information that Price gave us about the property outside of town that certainly does affect us in some way. I can't foresee commercial or the area without looking for a stable water and sewer connection for those businesses. I would find it hard to believe unless somebody can correct me. But anyway, we're looking at a very big influx, and I think this is where we need just to be aware of what's in front of us as we make these decisions.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in our letter to the council as it relates to sewer and water, we had indicated that the developer would be responsible for any and all upgrades necessary to the facility in order to meet their needs. If not, we can reinforce that in our letter back to them this time, which would include, should the pump station adjacent to Route 30 have to be relocated as a portion of this development, it is at the sole expense of the developer and not a town expense. Same thing with any other pump stations that are necessary, any force mains, etc. I'm a big indicator of, we have to make sure there's adequate schools, even though we don't control the schools. That's one of the unique natures of being a town. We have to look to our friends at the county BOE to ensure that there's adequate schools. There's the possibility that we'll approve an annexation and there will not be school capacity. So that property will sit there until, some point in time when school capacity is back. And that's at all three levels. It's not just at the high school. We're blessed to have a couple good elementary schools here and good middle school, but we don't control it. It's out of our control. I agree with Scott that, we spent a lot of time talking about Route 30 and the improvements that we would desire to see. At the end of the day, it's state highway, and they're going to make the call there. Should the property not be annexed, there's already 3 connections to the property that go through town roads based upon the way it's platted today. So, we're not going to necessarily have a large hammer that we can say, you're not going to connect there. They're already there. They're stubbed to the right-of-ways are stubbed to the property. So we kind of have to, pick our best, advancement possible. And I kind of like the devil that I know rather than the devil that I don't is my general opinion. We'll see.
I understand that, but I still struggle. I go back to the issue I brought up the first night when it might not have been as appropriate to bring it up, is what is the town? It seems like all we're doing is trying to figure out all the problems that this annexation is going to cause potentially for Manchester. What are we as a town really getting as a benefit from this annexation? I mean, we're talking about potentially increasing traffic, schools above capacity, strain on water and sewer system. usually when you see annexations come in, at least I've seen in other jurisdictions, they come in and are able to address some sort of a shortcoming that that jurisdiction may be struggling with. Maybe it is a poor sewer system, and the people who are going to annex the property say, we're going to build you a brand new pump station, upgrade your sewer, you're going to meet current state standards and not have all these discharges during storm events that aren't meeting state standards. You know, they produced a financial impact study, which in essence told us we were going to make, what, $1,500? I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of money that we were generating as far as revenues versus costs. And to me, it seems like the annexation is kind of a one-way street. The developer gets the increased density that they can't get currently, either at Old Town or on the Lippy property. We seem to get a lot of problems. I don't disagree with what you said, Bob, that if we control it, at least we know what's happening, because if something sits in the county, we may not have control. But I still struggle with the whole notion of annexing that property, because nothing that we've discussed to this point has suggested that it provides anything positive for us.
It also puts additional flow on our sewer system that we've done our water sewer numbers, but we've done them based on the enclaves we had to take in and the people who are on septic that we may at some time in the future have to accommodate.
Right. Those should be in our reserve. All enclaves and in-town undeveloped lots in town on septic lots should be in our reserves. We can always recommend that, if they need 1,000 capacity, that they have to develop 1,200 capacity, resolve issues that way. That's a possibility. In order to get at least some benefit back into there. I know that Steve and Town were reviewing the numbers, because during some of the big rains, we were starting to push up against our limits. So, maybe there needs to be an updated study done, which is not something that we should have to bear the burden of prior to. So.
I have to side with Henry on this one. I'm trying to look at the other side of it, just as he suggested. And sorry, Henry, I can't see a positive. I don't have anything positive to say about any of these proposed annexations. They do nothing but load an older municipal area with more and more burden with traffic, schools, sewer, water that we just aren't suited for. I'm concerned. And I think it's a good point that we talk about the enclaves that should be in our reserve capacity if their septic systems fail or they need water or whatever it is. But I think this is where we have to make a serious decision as to what is the benefit. And I just, in the three that we are just discussing here, possibly four, I just don't see any benefit to the town as a whole at this point. We're just not built at this point in time to handle this increased load. We can all agree that no matter what a traffic study says, from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till sometimes 6 o'clock at night, bar our latest problems here in society, that traffic goes from the high school to back to the circle at the bypass. And that certainly is something that is sustained Monday through Friday. And we're just kind of dealing with it. I don't see a positive, Henry. Can't come up with one, except for the fact that the developer of all these properties is the one who seems to be on the 70 to 80% side of positive.
Yeah, and just another point to reiterate a point that Steve Miller made in reviewing the financial study was that all of their estimates were based on a 15-year plan, which, as Steve pointed out, is just about the time after 15 years when all the infrastructure needs to be, paving needs to be redone. There are probably failures in the sewer lines and systems, and those are the costs that the town will then have to bear, which aren't accounted for in that financial impact statement.
There's also the financial view from the developer standpoint. I keep going back to the way it stands now with the county property maybe yielding 7 to 8, maybe 10 parcels, and our property yielding maybe 10 to 12, I think is the math. Bob did the math for me one night. So we might, as it stands without an annexation, he might yield 18 to 22 properties. Even at $150,000 a lot, that's a $3 million budget. He wouldn't have the money to do the infrastructure that would be required as it stands without annexing it. I don't think if he's required to bring Southwestern all the way through on our side as it sits right now, and deal with his wetlands issue in the front, I don't think if in my head, if annexation for him is not approved, I don't think the way it sits, there's enough financial, it won't make financial sense for him to move forward. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything here or there. But if you're talking a development with a potential of 40 lots, it gives him a bigger operating budget to make some of the fixes that are needed. So I'm back to that sword again of flipping the coin. And I love Bob put it very well. If we annex, we have more control. If we don't annex, it's a split county and Manchester town issue, and we're dealing with two sides of two different corners. But we lose more control that way, but the actual property might not go through. So I don't know. I'm still in the middle. I'm not a big fan right now of. I don't think we gain from it either.
I have a question, and Price is for you, but my understanding is that parcel, if it's not annexed, maximum can be is 7 wells. Is that right? I can't hear you.
Is that a price question or?
Yeah, I was asking Price. That's my.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, my understanding is that the parcel being in the county, the maximum it could be is 7 lots. Is that correct? With wells?
It's the septics that are driving it, isn't it? Because it's in the septic
Yeah.
care plan.
Correct, it's the well and septic. So on any property that's going to be based on septic, right now the minimum lot size or the minimum number of lots you can have, or actually maximum, the better way to put it, is 7 on septic.
Okay. And it was septic.
So no matter what typically, yes, if a property is, let's say, zoned R 40,000, they could have to add more, but if they have to be on septic, then by state law, with the new House Bill 236 or State SB 236, they have to be on, only 7 lots can be on septic in a subdivision.
Dale, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I have to agree with Alex. I think that all this annexation will not pay us dividends. It will create more problems than I think we want to face. So I've always been a person that we want to leave our town small and keep it much as a country town as we can. So I have to agree with Alex.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Dale?
Yeah, just a clarification. I apologize if this was clarified while I was taking some notes. But did I hear that if we were to go forward with a recommendation for annexation with certain conditions, that there then could be scenarios under which those conditions were not met, but he could still go through with the annexation legally? Could I confuse something there?
Okay, right now, as a planning commission, you're making a recommendation. So the recommendation might say, conceivably, yeah, we're for annexation, or we would be prepared to recommend it, but only under the following conditions. It's ultimately up to the town council whether to accept a part, none, or all of the planning commission's recommendations in that regard. I think, Dale, the part of the conversation you're probably referring to is earlier there was discussion about what happens if after annexation a road improvement called for specifically in the annexation agreement becomes not feasible after annexation, we find out, because of wetlands or for whatever reason. And I think we got into a discussion as to whether or not the town council could condition annexation upon some later event occurring, or could undo the annexation in effect later in the event a condition were not fulfilled, like the state highway approving a particular road development plan. And what I said was, yes, in theory, on paper, I guess that could occur. I guess in thinking about it, maybe the town council could also make the effective date of the annexation, at some point later after that event has occurred, I suppose. But what we also talked about is that once you're on the road with an annexation, it gets a little hard to undo it if some condition that the town council imposes is not later fulfilled. So I think that was the nature of the discussion, and hopefully that answers your question.
It did, thank you. I just was concerned with going forward with a recommendation, but not having our conditions met. I think that would concern me. But it sounds like no one's real anxious.
Well, the bottom line is, again, we're making recommendations to the council. So even if we decided, okay, we're going to go ahead and support the annexation, and we're going to attach all these conditions to it to try to address our concerns, the council may or may not accept those recommendations. They may just say, well, we think, with all due respect to the planning commission, we think that requiring the developer to do X and Y is a bit unreasonable, and we still would rather have this property in the town. We're going to approve it without those conditions. Conversely, the council could add their own conditions to make it even more difficult, and the developer might decide that they can't agree to the annexation based on the additional conditions that have been added either by the council or whatever conditions that we stipulate be part of an annexation agreement. They might say, we can't do that. And then nothing happens. But we're ultimately just making recommendations. The council is the one that is either going to agree to it or not support it. So we just have to decide. Obviously, we're going to have to prepare a plan whether we're going to support it, recommend support or not. So we still have to hash out all these issues regardless. So it's good to talk about them, but ultimately all we're doing is making a recommendation, and it's up to the council to make the final determination on this.
And those are all very excellent points. I think the council is going to give very strong consideration to the recommendation of the commission. That's going to be either yes, but, or no, because. And they're going to give, I think, strong consideration to our opinions.
Okay.
Yeah, I would echo Dale's comment based on the reception to the letter that I got from the council and mayor, that what we say and what our position is. And I think we've articulated through our letter some good points that they are really going to take these at heart, and it could cause quite a long discussion on their end. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add into this? And all these points are well taken. I would like to come away with this meeting with the framework of a recommendation of some sort, with the final language to be worked out amongst us in another work session or a next meeting, so we can get this back to the council and allow them to do their due diligence and deliberation.
My only additional comment to this is, while yes, we do have multiple properties which have expressed an interest of joining the town, we do need to make sure that we look at these on a case-by-case basis and in the order in which they're received. So I hate to say it, but first one in may or may not be the only one. Just something to keep everyone in mind of, because we can't say, we're not going to do this one because we want to do these other two. So now the justification for doing them may weigh heavily on it, that one is going to create too much of a traffic impact, or is inappropriate for the adjoining properties or other items. But we need to be very careful as to why we render the verdicts we render.
Agreed. We have to look at them individually, and we just can't cast a blanket over them and look at them as a group. We can't do that. They have to be looked at individually. So I've known some jurisdictions, just like you said, Bob, first one in the door got the annexation. The next one in the door didn't get it, and that was basically their reason. They said, they came in first, we felt we had enough capacity. You came in second, we don't feel we have capacity. That's it. So it could be that simple, but we do have to look at them individually.
Well, I think looking at them as a overall section, so here's the thing, this has already occurred. We pretty much are at the final stages of the Burwager property with their 30 some homes, and now we're going to add, potentially, we're looking at adding another somewhere around, let's say 40-ish, if it goes with a positive recommendation. So Bob, I think your point's well taken, and I think we're already there. And this is that time where we're looking at, we got A on the table, we're looking at B, and C's knocking on the door to come in, and it's just kind of piling up. And I wish Steve could have joined us, or Rodney. I would like to have really heard some discussion on water and sewer, where we are as we start to add A, B, and C.
Oh, absolutely. I think we need to make sure we've got the latest data in hand that we have. And, we can't look at it with rose-colored glasses that, sewers don't fix themselves. And, pandemics do alter traffic and alter school capacity, but, sewers still flow. And,
right. And leakage in sewer systems don't fix themselves. Like you said, they just tend to get worse. I mean, I think your point's well taken, Alex, about getting a work session and having them provide us with the most recent data on this, so we can really make an informed decision on this thing.
I've been wondering with the COVID and the stay-at-home order, how over capacity we've been, because we were running it 78 or something. I think we were at 78%. It happened. Now you got the entire.
I don't know if we were that high, Scott. I think we might have been a little lower than that, but Rodney indicated that there were a number of days with, as Bob pointed out earlier, with the heavy storm events where we exceeded the 80% capacity, which is at the point where it kicks in that there needs to be, if that happens on a consistent basis, then the town needs to have a plan in place as to how to address upgrades to the sewer system to handle that capacity.
Right.
And we did touch on that in the letter, because Rodney had indicated that we were talking about millions of dollars to accomplish the upgrade. So, as important as traffic and the schools are, and they are very significant, we can't forget those other basic infrastructure items, water and particularly sewer.
Thanks.
Unfortunately, this annexation, when they submitted, they didn't submit any type of plan to even see what they were going to try to do with homes. Like we did receive, Alex, with Patriots.
Right.
So you can kind of take a look at it and say, okay, this is what they think they want to do, but we know we don't allow this or we don't allow that. So you already have a better understanding of how many homes. We don't with this. We don't know what they were going to do.
Well, we don't, but we've kind of been operating under the assumption that they were hoping to try to get the yield that they had at Old Town dispersed across the two properties. I mean, they sort of suggested that, at least my take of that was when we were at the meeting, was that we've got 40 lots at Old Town and we can't do a heck of a lot here at Lippy. But if we bring Lippy in, get it annexed, get the zoning we want, then between that and Old Town, we can probably get that around that 40 lot yield. And I've kind of been using that as my mental number for the sewer capacity issues from that property.
All right, then to move this along, unless there's an objection, I think we all know where we sit. I believe I can speak for the group and say that we are all concerned about water sewer capacity and where the town stands. And without further concise information from town staff on water and sewer conditions as it relates to with the stay-at-home orders to see the capacity increase, and then discussions with what Mr. would like to do in theory, as Henry said, at that 40 home mark. I think we really need to have that information before I ask for the commission to go one way or the other with a recommendation. So unless I hear any dissent, Michelle, we need to schedule another work session with Rodney and Steve with updated dates as soon as everybody's available. And then with that information, I think we'll soothe a lot of ruffled feathers one way or the other with some good data. And again, that would feed back into our recommendations based on our our pieces of facts that go in with our agreed upon recommendation with those figures. That's a big part of it. Do I hear any dissent from anybody on?
No, I'm fine with that, Alex.
Great.
The one thing I'd like to add is that the Leicester property in Hampstead is moving forward. That's the piece on the bypass just south of Shiloh. And they're talking about 230 to 280 residential lots on that property. So I'd like to know what the current Manchester Valley school capacity is. And then we need to look at what the figures are going to be if that property moves forward. And it's moving forward. The town agreed to the change in the zoning to bring it back to residential. So it's definitely moving forward. That's going to be a big contributor at 200 plus homes. So I'd like to know what school capacity is now. Look at what it would be with Burwager. This property, the Lippy property being annexed, we can do some rough figures. I'm sure Price can, based on the number of households, how many expected students we can have at what stage of the game, for each of the schools, elementary, middle, and high school, and see what those numbers are going to look like, given that we've got this big development occurring down in Hampstead.
Is that by Leicester's Park?
No, this is a different Leicester farm. If you go down Old 30 and you go to, I guess that's Houtsville Road, not Shiloh. You go out Houtsville Road, go over the bridge and you start going out of town. There's a big piece that's still farmed. It was going to be an industrial development. It originally been residential a long time ago. It got rezoned to industrial development. They got an approved plan for industrial pretty much. And then the road network just doesn't really support industrial. So now they've been sitting on it and now they've gotten it rezoned back to residential.
Right, that's Rock Realty's property, right?
Right.
Yeah, Florida Rock, FRP,
yeah.
They have it.
This is what I find kind of I know we have to look at it in our own prism or our own bubble, but I feel that without Price's information about the property below Cape Horn Road, Henry's information on the Leicester property in Hampstead, we really do. Bob, I feel like telling you we're already down to E and F in this whole thing. And it's quite interesting that we need to get a real overview of what's going on. So what's the possibility of Price? Could you make this session to talk to us about all these other things that come in? And Michelle, can we get somebody from the school system to come in and give us an overview on the school capacity?
Well, I had just asked Price today, which he did send me the plans for the estimated children or population in the schools, but I couldn't
Okay.
find the state rated capacity. So I have reached out to each of the principals to get that information so I could see where their estimated numbers fit within the rated capacity of the school.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll continue this discussion at our work session with some facts of water, sewer, and other things going on in the area. Anybody have any final comments on the the Lippy annexation? Can't even say it anymore. Okay. With that, Michelle, you want to move on to the last item, which is Patriots Overlook?
Yeah, the council accepted the annexation application from Patriots Overlook. And I think I have that somewhere here too to show you. And I think you all had the paperwork,
Yes.
but this is the portion, this is Park Avenue and Brome Court. This portion in here, this is 6.58, it's already in town. They own these two in town. This is in-town portion of this 12 acres. And so this is the 12 acres that they are looking to annex. These are 4 off conveyances that come in off of Rome on a private drive that were previously sold prior to this request for annexation. So that is what we were handed to. And I think I've given you all your paperwork. So we just needed to schedule some sort of work session on this, I guess, too, Alex, to discuss how we feel.
Well, I mean, we might as well make a humdinger and go at it with our next work session, because we can do Lippy and have this one as a discussion also. So I know that Michelle had made some comments when we talked on the phone about it. If you looked in your, there was a couple common use driveways that were, I believe, above what we allow as a town planning commission. And of course, we have the one letter of rejection for the annexation from some folks at Brome Court. So this is another 30-acre, 30-some group of homes that are going in off of Park Avenue right across. I keep calling it Washington Way. That's not it. What's
Park
that cross?
Avenue.
No,
Right side.
Bright Side. Sorry, Bob, I should know that.
Okay.
I've only lived there for 50 years. So across from Bright Side, that development would go in off of the PV 2.0 lot.
The letter that we got in was a gentleman back in here who is representing these 4 off conveyances who have acre lots and didn't want a smaller lot community around them. So,
Okay.
and then, but I sent that letter to you, so you all have that in your records.
That 12 acres,
And-
that's a side of a hill, isn't it?
Yes.
No,
and that-
the off conveyances are this where the hill comes down off of Broham Court. That's all flat, heavily wooded, fallow property. That's the original bypass property that the state bought, because the bypass was supposed to come on this side, our side of Manchester.
No, but that 12, a lot of that 12 acres is on the side of a hill, isn't it?
Right, so down at the very part of it, down towards 27, they can't do anything in there, that's all stormwater. So that's why they're showing all those houses on those use and commons. And there's, at one point, I think there was 6 of them on one. It's very,
Okay.
and Price, what's the rule in the county for use and commons and the amount of houses?
My understanding, use the comments, you guys can come, you guys want to use the comments, or what's your actual question?
Do you have a maximum amount of homes you allow on a use and common?
7. It's the maximum you can have on use the comments.
I'm sorry, what?
7 is the maximum you can have on use the common.
Okay, and I
We
don't,
also have criteria for length and all that. We have to come in when it comes pertaining to pull loss and that kind of stuff. But yeah, 7 is the maximum amount you can have.
Okay, 7. All right. That's the, I'm sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
That's a county rule. That's not what we have followed it.
Okay. I think I lost their proposed layout plan, so I'll need to get another copy of that. But
So I thought Patriots Overlook was the one that was gonna look over Miller's. That one. The Miller's grocery store, wasn't that?
No,
the
that's
Overlook?
the other one that's coming in off behind the, where the old Mauer and Miller Butcher Shop used to be.
Yeah, those lots back there. What was
Mhm.
that one that was proposing like a 3-story retirement home? That's not, that's different than this one.
Yes, that
I thought
was
that was
a retirement home.
Yeah,
And at this point, that has, their approval on that has expired. Everything's expired. So there you have to start over.
all right.
I'm
Okay.
in Bob's camp. I didn't seem to get a copy of the layout. I got a copy of their annexation plan, but plan to accompany the annexation plat, but I didn't get a copy of the lot layout. If you can email that to me, I'd appreciate it.
Alex, was the lot layout in that email I sent with all the attachments?
Yeah, that's where I got it, but your mail out packet did not have the plot plan
right.
in it with, yeah.
I
So-
didn't print out because I had the package got mailed. I assumed everything was in that, so.
I didn't know it
My
wasn't in
mistake.
there. So it is a single document in the email that I sent to you with all of those attachments.
okay.
It
It
was
says,
not in the paper.
it's 2020.05 concept plan is the one that's got it was in the email. It's a rough copy of the layout. That is a very complicated mess is what it looks like.
Well, when you're grading on the side of a hill, it can get a little interesting.
Yeah,
Sure.
really. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So,
Anybody have anything else? I think we all know what's in front of us. We're going to have, at least one, probably two pretty heavy work sessions to try to get these two items accomplished with the issues that face us. So with that, I'll take any closing comments from anybody.
I'd like to just thank Michelle for getting this all coordinated and organized. It was long overdue and glad we can get back, and I'm glad everybody seems to be doing well, and hopefully we'll get past the worst of this here shortly and can get back to a more normal meeting around the table to discuss things, but at least we're able to do this, which is good. But again, thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Welcome.
ditto. Okay. Well, with that, I make motion to adjourn.
I
Okay.
will second that motion.
Sounds good. Tom Price, thanks for hanging on for the duration. A lot of stuff discussed here. We hope to see you soon. Everybody have a good night. Michelle, again, thank you. Job well done.
Welcome.
And we will talk to everybody soon. Have a good night.
Good evening,
Thanks.
everybody.
Good night.